In a quiet, dusty town nestled between rolling hills and endless fields of corn, life moved at a slow, predictable pace, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business, and dreams often stayed small because the world outside felt impossibly far away. It was here in this unassuming corner of the country that 14-year-old Maya lived her life, a life marked by hardship, but also filled with moments of quiet beauty. Maya's days began early, before the sun had fully risen. She shared a tiny weathered house with her grandmother, Miss Ruth, who worked tirelessly as a seamstress to make ends meet. Their home wasn't much, just 2 rooms, creaky wooden floors, and peeling wallpaper, but it was theirs. Inside, an old record player sat on a rickety table, its needle scratching softly against worn vinyl records. Those records were treasures passed down from Maya's late mother, whose voice seemed to echo through the melodies of gospel hymns and soulful ballads. Whenever Maya felt lonely or overwhelmed, she'd press play, letting the music wrap around her like a warm embrace. School was another story entirely. For Maya, walking into the classroom each morning felt like stepping onto a battlefield. Her clothes were clean but patched up, handed down from cousins or thrift stores, making her stand out among classmates dressed in brand new jeans and trendy sneakers. Some kids whispered behind her back, calling her names like Raggedy Maya, or laughing about how her shoes looked too big for her feet. Others ignored her completely, pretending she didn't exist. Still, Maya tried not to let it bother her. She kept her head down, focusing on her studies and dreaming of a future where she could leave the hurtful whispers behind. What no one at school realized was that beneath Maya's shy exterior lay a vibrant spirit fueled by music. When she wasn't helping her grandmother sew or tending to their small vegetable garden, Maya sang. She sang while washing dishes, her voice bouncing off the kitchen walls. She sang while walking home from school, imagining herself on a grand stage under dazzling lights. And sometimes, late at night when the house grew still, she'd sit cross-legged on her bed, staring out the window at the stars, and sing until her throat grew hoarse. Singing made her feel alive, like she was part of something bigger than herself. It was her escape, her secret joy, and the one thing that truly belonged to her. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves swirled in the breeze outside the classroom window, Maya found herself sitting quietly at her desk, doodling musical notes in the margins of her notebook. The teacher, Mrs. Harper, stood at the front of the room, clapping her hands to get everyone's attention. "All right, class," she announced with forced enthusiasm. "It's almost time for our annual talent show. Who wants to sign up?" The room buzzed with excitement as students eagerly raised their hands, already planning elaborate dance routines or magic tricks. Maya sank lower in her seat, hoping to disappear entirely. But then Mrs. Harper turned toward her, a sly smile playing on her lips. "You know," she said, her tone light but laced with mockery, "I've heard Maya humming in the hallways. Maybe we should give her a chance to shine. What do you think, Maya? Would you like to sing for us?" The words hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. A few students snickered, nudging each other and exchanging knowing glances. One boy called out, "Yeah, Maya, go ahead. Let's hear it." His comment set off a chain reaction of laughter, rippling through the room like waves crashing against the shore. Maya's face burned red, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. She stared at her desk, clutching her pencil tightly, wishing she could melt into the floorboards beneath her feet. But even as embarrassment washed over her, a flicker of defiance stirred deep inside. Why did they have to laugh? Why couldn't they see that singing wasn't just some silly hobby for her? It was her lifeline, her safe haven. She wanted to tell them all to stop, to shout that their jokes weren't funny, but instead, she bit her tongue and remained silent. The bell rang moments later, signaling the end of class, and Maya bolted out the door, tears threatening to spill down her cheeks. As she walked home that afternoon, the weight of the day pressed heavily on her shoulders. The laughter echoed in her mind, taunting her with every step. Yet somewhere amid the hurt, a stubborn thought began to take root. What if she did sing? Not because anyone dared her or expected her to fail, but because she owed it to herself, to try. After all, hadn't her mother always told her that music had the power to heal, to inspire, to change hearts? If nothing else, maybe singing would remind her, and perhaps even those who doubted her, that she was more than the labels they slapped on her. By the time Maya reached her front door, her resolve had hardened. She wouldn't let fear or ridicule hold her back anymore. That evening, as the last rays of sunlight filtered through the curtains, she stood in front of the cracked mirror in her bedroom, practicing scales and testing out songs. Each note carried a little piece of her soul, a promise to herself that she wouldn't let anyone silence her voice. Not now, not ever. Little did Maya know, this decision would set off a chain of events that would change her life forever. From the dusty streets of her small town to stages she'd never dreamed of standing on, her journey was only beginning. But for now, all she knew was this. She had a song in her heart, and she intended to share it with the world, even if the world wasn't quite ready to listen. The next day at school, the air buzzed with whispers about Maya. News of Mrs. Harper's sarcastic comment during class had spread like wildfire, and by lunchtime everyone seemed to have an opinion. Some students laughed openly, replaying the moment in exaggerated tones. Did you hear what she said? Let's give Maya a chance. Others rolled their eyes, dismissing the idea as ridiculous. Maya tried to ignore them, keeping her head down as she picked at her sandwich in the corner of the cafeteria. But no matter how hard she focused on her food or pretended not to listen, the giggles and snide remarks seeped into her thoughts like rain through a leaky roof. As the final bell rang, signaling the end of the school day, Maya hurried toward the exit, eager to escape the suffocating atmosphere. Just as she reached the hallway near the lockers, two figures stepped in front of her, blocking her path. It was Jasmine and Tasha, two of the most popular girls in 8th grade. They were known for their sharp tongues and even sharper fashion sense, always dressed in matching outfits that screamed designer labels. Today they wore identical smirks, their arms crossed as they loomed over Maya. "Hey, Maya," Jasmine drawled, her voice dripping with mockery. "We heard you're thinking about singing at the talent show. Is that true?" Maya froze, her heart skipping a beat. She hadn't told anyone about her decision, not even her grandmother. How did they know? Had someone overheard her practicing last night? Or worse, was this just another cruel joke? Tasha chimed in, her tone equally cutting. "Come on, don't be shy. If you're so good at singing, why don't you prove it? Show us what you've got." Their words stung, but beneath the sting lay something else. A challenge. Maya felt a flicker of anger ignite inside her chest. Why did they always feel the need to belittle her? To make her feel small and insignificant? She clenched her fists tightly, her nails digging into her palms. For a moment, she considered walking away, brushing off their taunts like she usually did. But then, an unexpected thought crossed her mind. What if she didn't back down this time? What if she faced their ridicule head-on and showed them exactly who she was? Taking a deep breath, Maya looked up, meeting Jasmine's gaze squarely. Her voice trembled slightly, but she forced herself to speak. "Fine," she said, surprising even herself with the firmness in her tone. "I'll do it. I'll sing at the talent show." Jasmine and Tasha exchanged glances, clearly taken aback by her response. Then Jasmine smirked again, though there was a hint of uncertainty in her expression now. "Oh, really?" she said, leaning closer. "Well, we'll see about that. Everyone's going to be watching, you know. You better not embarrass yourself." With that, the two girls turned and walked away, leaving Maya standing alone in the hallway. As their laughter faded into the distance, Maya exhaled slowly, her legs feeling like jelly beneath her. Signing up for the talent show had been one thing, but confronting those who mocked her felt entirely different. Still, she couldn't deny the tiny spark of pride glowing within her. For once, she hadn't let fear dictate her actions. She had stood her ground, even if it scared her to death. That evening, as Maya sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the cracked ceiling above her, Doubts began creeping in. Was she crazy to think she could pull this off? Singing in front of hundreds of people, most of whom probably expected her to fail, wasn't exactly easy. And yet every time she closed her eyes, she could hear her mother's voice whispering encouragement, urging her to keep going. Music wasn't just a hobby, it was part of who she was. If she gave up now, wouldn't she be letting down not only herself, but also the memory of her mother? Determined to push forward, Maya spent the next few days choosing the perfect song. She rifled through her grandmother's collection of records, searching for something that spoke to her soul. Finally, her fingers landed on an old vinyl record labeled "His Eye is on the Sparrow." The title sent shivers down her spine. She remembered listening to it countless times as a child, her mother explaining the meaning behind the lyrics. God watches over even the smallest creatures, never forgetting them. To Maya, the message resonated deeply. Growing up poor and facing constant judgment, she often felt overlooked, like a sparrow trying to find its place in a vast sky. This song wasn't just music, it was a lifeline, a reminder that she mattered. With the song chosen, Maya threw herself into practice. Every spare moment became an opportunity to hone her craft. In the mornings, she sang softly, while helping her grandmother sew dresses. During recess at school, she retreated to a quiet spot, behind the gymnasium, rehearsing under the shade of a towering oak tree. At night, when the rest of the house grew silent, she stood in front of the mirror, imagining herself on stage. Her voice wavered at first, shaky and unsure, but with each passing day, it grew stronger, more confident. Notes soared higher, emotions poured deeper, and soon, she found herself losing track of time, completely lost in the music. Despite her progress, Maya couldn't shake the looming shadow of doubt. What if the audience laughed instead of clapping? What if her voice cracked mid-performance, ruining everything? These fears haunted her dreams, turning peaceful nights into restless ones. One evening, as she sat cross-legged on her bed scribbling lyrics onto scraps of paper, her grandmother knocked gently on the door before stepping inside. "Maya, sweetheart," Miss Ruth said, her voice warm and steady. "You've been working awfully hard lately. Are you all right?" Maya hesitated, unsure of how much to share. But looking into her grandmother's kind eyes, she decided to open up. "I'm scared, Grandma," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if I mess up? What if everyone laughs at me?" Miss Ruth sat beside her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Listen to me, child," she said firmly. "Life is full of risks, and sometimes we have to take them, even when we're afraid. Your mama always used to say that courage isn't about not being scared, it's about doing what you believe in despite the fear. You've got a gift, Maya, don't let anyone take that away from you." Her grandmother's words struck a chord deep within Maya. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them away, nodding slowly. She realized then that this wasn't just about proving herself to others. It was about honoring the passion that made her who she was. No matter what happened at the talent show, she would walk away knowing she'd given it her all. The days leading up to the event passed in a blur of rehearsals and nervous anticipation. Maya avoided eye contact with Jasmine and Tasha whenever they passed her in the hallway, ignoring their snickers and sideways glances. Instead, she focused on the task ahead, visualizing herself standing tall under the spotlight, her voice carrying across the room like a beacon of hope. By the time the big night arrived, her nerves were stretched taut, but her determination burned brighter than ever. Backstage, surrounded by props and costumes, Maya took slow, deliberate breaths, trying to calm her racing heart. The sound of applause filtered through the curtain, signaling the start of the show. One by one, students stepped onto the stage, showcasing their talents with flair and confidence. There were dancers spinning gracefully, comedians delivering punchlines, and magicians pulling rabbits out of hats. Each performance drew cheers and whistles from the audience, building excitement for what came next. Finally, the MC announced, "Our next performer is Maya Johnson. Give her a round of applause." For a brief moment, the world seemed to stop. Maya gripped the edges of the curtain, her knuckles white. Then, summoning every ounce of courage she possessed, She stepped out onto the stage and into the unknown. The moment Maya stepped onto the stage, the world seemed to shrink around her. The bright spotlight blinded her, making it impossible to see anything beyond the first row of seats. Her heart thundered in her chest, each beat echoing like a drum roll in her ears. She could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes on her, their gazes heavy and expectant. For a split second, panic threatened to take over. What if she froze? What if her voice failed her? But then she closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and reminded herself why she was there. Not for applause or approval, but because this was her moment to share something real, something true. Maya had spent countless hours preparing for this night, not just practicing her song, but also visualizing every detail of her performance. She knew she couldn't compete with the flashy costumes or elaborate props that other students brought to the stage. Instead, she focused on what she could offer: authenticity. Tonight she wore her grandmother's best dress, a simple navy blue frock with delicate lace trim that hugged her frame modestly. It wasn't glamorous, but it was clean, pressed, and carried a piece of her family's love stitched into its seams. On her feet were the same slightly too big shoes she'd worn all year, polished until they gleamed faintly under the harsh lights. Standing at the microphone stand, Maya adjusted its height nervously before speaking into it. "Hi," she began, her voice trembling. The audience stirred slightly, some leaning forward in curiosity while others exchanged skeptical glances. Maya swallowed hard, gripping the edges of the stand as though it might anchor her to the ground. "I'm going to sing a song called 'His Eye is on the Sparrow.' It means a lot to me, and I hope you'll enjoy it." Her introduction was met with polite silence, though a few snickers rippled through the back rows. Maya ignored them, closing her eyes once more as she steadied herself. She thought about her mother, whose laughter used slightest breeze. She remembered her grandmother's wise words: "Courage isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what you believe in, despite the fear." And then she let go. The first note rang out clear and pure, cutting through the tension in the room like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Maya's voice started softly, almost hesitantly, as though testing the waters. But within seconds, it grew stronger, richer, filling the auditorium with a warmth that caught everyone off guard. The lyrics flowed effortlessly from her lips, each word infused with emotion so raw and genuine that it felt less like a performance and more like a confession. Why should I feel discouraged? Why should the shadows come? Why should my heart be lonely and long for heaven and home? As Maya sang, something remarkable happened. The restless murmurs and whispered jokes faded into silence. Students who had been slouched lazily in their chairs sat up straighter, their expressions shifting from boredom to awe. Teachers exchanged stunned glances, their pens pausing mid-note on judging scorecards. Even Jasmine and Tasha, seated near the front with smirks still lingering on their faces, found themselves transfixed, their arms slowly lowering from their crossed positions. Maya's voice soared higher with each verse, carrying the weight of years of pain, resilience, and hope. It wasn't just a melody, it was a story of growing up poor in a town where opportunities were scarce, a story of losing a parent too soon and finding solace in music, a story of enduring ridicule and loneliness yet refusing to let bitterness take root. Every note vibrated with sincerity, reaching places in people's hearts they didn't even know existed. By the time she reached the chorus, "His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches me," the entire room seemed to hold its collective breath. Tears glistened in the corners of several eyes, including Mrs. Harper's, who clutched her clipboard tightly, utterly captivated. Parents in the audience exchanged astonished looks, whispering things like, "Where did she learn to sing like that?" and "She's incredible." Even the janitor, who had been sweeping quietly near the exit, stopped mid-motion, resting his broom against the wall as he listened intently. What struck everyone most was how unguarded Maya appeared. There were no fancy dance moves, no dramatic gestures, just a girl standing alone on a stage, pouring her soul into a song that meant everything to her. Her vulnerability was magnetic, drawing people in and holding them captive. For those few minutes, the crowded auditorium felt intimate, as though Maya were singing directly to each person, sharing a piece of her journey with them. When the final note lingered in the air, the silence that followed was profound. No one moved. No one spoke. It was as though the audience needed a moment to process what they had just witnessed. Then, like a dam breaking, the room erupted into applause. At first it started with scattered claps, tentative and unsure. But within seconds the sound swelled into a tidal wave of cheers, whistles, and stomping feet. People stood, their hands raised high, shouting encouragement and admiration. Maya opened her eyes, startled by the overwhelming reaction. She had expected polite clapping, maybe a few kind smiles. This was something else entirely. Her cheeks flushed with heat, and for a moment she simply stood there, frozen in disbelief. Was this really happening? Had she actually done it? From the front row, Miss Ruth dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, beaming with pride. Beside her, Mrs. Harper leaned over and whispered, "I had no idea she could sing like that." None of us did. Nearby, Jasmine and Tasha exchanged wide-eyed looks, their earlier mockery replaced by genuine astonishment. Even the boy who had teased Maya in class earlier gave her an awkward thumbs up, mouthing the words, "That was amazing." As the applause continued, Maya finally managed to find her footing. She offered a shy smile, bowing her head slightly, before stepping back from the microphone. The MC rushed onto the stage, grinning broadly. "Let's give another round of applause for Maya Johnson, everyone," he shouted, gesturing toward her. The crowd obliged enthusiastically, their cheers ringing out even louder than before. Backstage, Maya collapsed onto a folding chair, her legs trembling beneath her. She felt dizzy, overwhelmed by the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. Joy, relief, disbelief, they all collided in a chaotic tangle. Other performers congratulated her as they passed, patting her shoulder or offering quick hugs. One girl, a dancer named Claire, stopped to say, "You were incredible. Seriously, I've never heard anyone sing like that." Despite the accolades, Maya struggled to fully grasp what had just occurred. All her life she'd been told, directly or indirectly, that she wasn't enough. That her clothes weren't stylish enough, her presence wasn't noticeable enough, her voice wasn't strong enough. Yet tonight, she had proven otherwise, not just to the world, but to herself. She realized now that the doubts she'd harbored weren't entirely hers. They had been planted by others, watered by years of neglect and judgment. Singing hadn't erased those doubts completely, but it had given her the tools to confront them head-on. When the talent show ended and the winners were announced, Maya barely registered the MC calling her name for first place. She accepted the trophy with trembling hands, her mind still reeling from the evening's events. As she posed for photos with her classmates and teachers, she couldn't help but notice how differently they treated her. Gone were the sneers and sideways glances. In their place were smiles, nods, and respectful acknowledgement. It was a strange sensation, like stepping into a new reality where she finally belonged. Later that night, as Maya lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she replayed the evening in her mind. The nervousness, the triumph, the validation, all of it felt surreal, like a dream she might wake up from at any moment. But deep down, she knew this was only the beginning. Something inside her had shifted during those few minutes on stage. She had discovered a power she hadn't known she possessed. A power to move people, to inspire them, to make them see her for who she truly was. And as sleep finally claimed her, one thought lingered in her mind. If she could face an entire auditorium full of skeptics and doubters and win them over with nothing but her voice, then perhaps she could face anything. The aftermath of the talent show was unlike anything Maya could have imagined. The very next morning as she walked into school, the atmosphere felt different, charged with a kind of energy she had never experienced before. Students who had once ignored her now greeted her with smiles and nods. Some even stopped to congratulate her, their words laced with genuine admiration. "You were amazing last night," one boy said shyly, his hands stuffed into his pockets. Another girl added, "I didn't know you could sing like that. You blew everyone away." For the first time in her life, Maya wasn't invisible, But it wasn't just her classmates who noticed the change. Teachers began treating her differently too. Mrs. Harper, who had initially made that sarcastic comment about Maya singing, approached her after homeroom with an apologetic smile. "Maya, I owe you an apology," she admitted, her voice soft, but sincere. "What I said during class, it wasn't fair to you, and seeing your performance last night reminded me how wrong I was. You have an incredible gift." Maya nodded quietly, accepting the apology without resentment. She didn't need anyone to grovel. All she wanted was for people to see her for who she really was, a girl with dreams and talents worth celebrating. Word of Maya's performance spread quickly beyond the walls of the school. Local newspapers caught wind of the story and sent reporters to interview her. One journalist, a kind woman named Ms. Carter, visited Maya's home later that week. Sitting at the kitchen table with her grandmother, Maya recounted her journey, the teasing, the doubts, the courage it took to step onto that stage. As she spoke, tears welled up in Miss Ruth's eyes, though she smiled proudly through them. When the article appeared in the paper a few days later, it painted Maya not as a victim of bullying, but as a symbol of resilience and hope. The headline read, "Local teen shatters stereotypes with soul-stirring talent show performance." The attention brought both challenges and opportunities. While Maya appreciated the newfound respect from her peers and community, she also struggled with the weight of expectations. Suddenly, everyone seemed to have opinions about what she should do next. Some suggested she join the school choir or audition for bigger competitions. Others urged her to pursue music professionally, insisting she had the potential to become famous. At times, the pressure felt suffocating. How could she live up to such high praise without losing herself in the process? Through it all, Maya leaned heavily on her grandmother for guidance. Miss Ruth listened patiently as Maya poured out her fears and frustrations, offering wisdom rooted in years of life experience. "Child, don't let other people's ideas define you," she said one evening, stirring a pot of soup on the stove. "Yes, they're excited for you, and that's wonderful. But remember why you started singing in the first place. It wasn't for fame or applause. It was because it made your heart happy. Hold on to that no matter what happens." Miss Ruth's words grounded Maya, reminding her to stay true to herself. She decided to take things one step at a time, focusing on what brought her joy rather than chasing external validation. Still, fate had other plans. One crisp Saturday afternoon, as Maya helped her grandmother hang laundry in the backyard, a car pulled up outside their house. Out stepped a tall man in a tailored suit, his salt and pepper hair neatly combed. He introduced himself as Mr. Anderson, a music producer visiting relatives in town. "I heard about your performance at the talent show," he explained, his tone warm and professional. "My niece couldn't stop talking about it, so I watched the video online. Your voice, it's extraordinary. Have you ever considered pursuing music seriously?" Maya blinked, stunned. A music producer talking to her. Her mind raced as she tried to process his words. I don't know," she stammered, glancing at her grandmother for support. Miss Ruth placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, silently encouraging her to listen. Over the next hour, Mr. Anderson shared his vision. He believed Maya had the potential to reach a wider audience, to share her gift with the world. He offered to mentor her, helping her record demos and connect with industry professionals. It sounded like a dream come true, but it also came with risks. Pursuing a career in music meant stepping far outside her comfort zone, leaving behind the familiarity of her small town for the uncertainty of the big city. Could she handle the pressure? Would she succeed or would she crash and burn? That night, Maya lay awake, staring at the ceiling as conflicting thoughts swirled in her mind. On one hand, the opportunity was thrilling, a chance to turn her passion into something greater than she'd ever imagined. On the other hand, fear gnawed at her. What if she failed? What if people realized she wasn't as talented as they thought? These doubts haunted her, keeping her tossing and turning long after midnight. When morning came, Maya sought solace in her usual spot behind the gymnasium, where she often practiced during recess. As she sang softly to herself, letting the melodies wash over her, clarity began to emerge. This wasn't just about proving herself to others anymore. It was about honoring the fire within her, the same fire that had pushed her to face ridicule and stand on that stage despite her fears. If she turned down this opportunity, she might always wonder what could have been. And while success wasn't guaranteed, neither was failure. All she could do was try. With renewed determination, Maya accepted Mr. Anderson's offer. Over the following months, she worked tirelessly, balancing schoolwork with recording sessions and vocal lessons. There were moments of frustration when her voice cracked or when lyrics refused to flow smoothly. But there were also moments of pure magic, when everything clicked into place and she felt invincible. Through it all, her grandmother remained her rock, cheering her on every step of the way. As news of Maya's budding career spread, the town rallied around her. Neighbors who had once overlooked her now attended her performances at local events, clapping and cheering as though they'd known her brilliance all along. Even Jasmine and Tasha approached her one day, sheepishly apologizing for their earlier behavior. "We're sorry for being mean," Jasmine admitted, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "You're really talented, and we were wrong about you." Maya accepted their apology graciously, choosing to focus on forgiveness rather than resentment. By the time graduation rolled around, Maya was no longer the quiet, overlooked girl who blended into the background. She had become a beacon of inspiration, proof that perseverance and self-belief could overcome even the harshest obstacles. During her valedictorian speech, she addressed her classmates with heartfelt sincerity. "Life is full of challenges," she said, her voice steady and strong. "People will doubt you, laugh at you, and try to make you feel small. But don't let them. Believe in yourself even when it's hard, because somewhere out there, someone is waiting to hear your song." Her words earned a standing ovation, cementing her legacy as more than just a singer but as a role model for future generations. Though her journey was far from over, Maya knew she had already achieved something remarkable. She had transformed pain into purpose, silence into sound, and judgment into awe. And as she stood on the cusp of a new chapter, ready to chase her dreams with unwavering resolve, she carried with her the lessons of her past, the laughter, the tears, and the triumphs that had shaped her into the person she was destined to become. The years that followed Maya's high school graduation were a whirlwind of growth, challenges, and triumphs. With Mr. Anderson's guidance, she began to carve out a path in the music industry, a world vastly different from the quiet, predictable rhythms of her small town. It wasn't easy. The transition from singing alone in her bedroom to performing on professional stages came with its share of struggles. There were days when self-doubt crept back in, whispering cruel reminders of her humble beginnings. But every time Maya felt like giving up, she remembered the little girl who had dared to sing, despite the laughter and jeers. That memory fueled her determination to keep moving forward. Her first big break came sooner than anyone expected. After months of recording demos and attending auditions, Maya landed a spot opening for a well-known gospel artist at a regional concert. The venue was packed, filled with thousands of people eager to hear the headliner perform. Backstage, Maya paced nervously, her hands trembling as she clutched the microphone. This was nothing like the talent show. This was a sea of strangers, many of whom had paid good money to see someone else. What if they didn't like her? What if she froze under the pressure? But when the lights dimmed and her name was announced, something remarkable happened. As Maya stepped onto the stage, her nerves melted away, replaced by the familiar rush of adrenaline that came with singing. Her voice soared through the arena, rich and soulful, wrapping itself around the audience like a warm embrace. By the end of her set, the crowd was on their feet, cheering wildly. Some even recorded videos of her performance, posting them online where they quickly gained traction. Overnight, Maya went from being an unknown teenager to a rising star. The attention brought both blessings and challenges. Record labels reached out, offering contracts and opportunities that seemed too good to be true. Maya, however, remained cautious. She had seen enough stories of young artists exploited by greedy, executives to know better than to jump at the first offer. Instead, she leaned on Mr. Anderson's expertise, carefully reviewing each proposal until they found one that aligned with her values and vision. When she finally signed her first record deal, it felt like more than just a business agreement. It was validation of all the hard work she'd poured into her craft. Recording her debut album was a transformative experience. For the first time, Maya had access to state-of-the-art studios, talented producers, and seasoned musicians who helped bring her songs to life. Yet amidst all the glitz and glamour, she stayed grounded. Many of the tracks on the album were inspired by her childhood, the struggles, the joys, the lessons learned along the way. One song titled Sparrow's Wings became an instant hit, resonating deeply with listeners who identified with its message of resilience and hope. Critics praised Maya not only for her vocal prowess, but also for her authenticity. Her music feels personal, like she's inviting us into her world, wrote one reviewer. Another called her a voice for the unheard. As her career took off, Maya made a conscious effort to remain connected to her roots. Despite traveling across the country for performances and interviews, she returned home often, visiting her grandmother and catching up with old friends. She never forgot the community that had shaped her, even during the darkest times. In fact, she used her platform to give back, organizing benefit concerts to raise funds for local schools and charities. During one such event, she dedicated a heartfelt rendition of His Eye is on the Sparrow to Miss Ruth, who sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face. Maya's success didn't shield her from criticism entirely. Some skeptics dismissed her achievements, claiming she was merely a product of hype or luck. Others questioned whether she could sustain her momentum in an industry notorious for chewing up and spitting out new talent. But Maya refused to let negativity derail her. Instead, she channeled those doubts into motivation, working harder than ever to prove herself. Each performance, each interview, each interaction with fans reinforced her belief that she belonged exactly where she was. One of the most defining moments of her journey came several years later, when she received an invitation to perform at a prestigious awards ceremony. Standing backstage, surrounded by some of the biggest names in music, Maya couldn't help but marvel at how far she'd come. Just a decade earlier, she had been a shy teenager afraid to raise her hand in class. Now, she was about to share the same stage as her idols. When her turn came, Maya walked out to thunderous applause, her confidence radiating like sunlight. Dressed in a shimmering gown borrowed from a designer friend, she looked every bit the star she had become. But as she began to sing, it was clear that her true power lay not in her appearance, but in her ability to connect with people. Her voice carried the weight of her story, of pain transformed into purpose, of ridicule turned into reverence. By the final note, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Even the usually stoic hosts wiped away tears as they thanked her for her unforgettable performance. That night marked a turning point in Maya's career. Not only did she win multiple accolades, including Best New Artist and Song of the Year, but she also cemented her status as a force to be reckoned with in the music industry. Doors that had once seemed impenetrable now swung open effortlessly. She collaborated with legendary artists, performed at sold-out arenas, and even launched her own foundation to support aspiring musicians from underserved communities. Through it all, she remained humble, always crediting her grandmother, her late mother, and her faith for guiding her through the toughest moments. Looking back, Maya realized that her journey had been less about achieving fame and more about finding her voice, both literally and figuratively. Singing had given her the courage to stand tall in a world that often tried to shrink her. It had taught her that strength isn't measured by how much you endure, but by how boldly you rise after falling. And perhaps most importantly, it had shown her that everyone has a song within them waiting to be sung. Today, Maya is celebrated not just for her musical talent, but for the lives she has touched along the way. Fans write letters thanking her for inspiring them to chase their dreams no matter how impossible they may seem. Teachers use her story in classrooms to encourage students to believe in themselves. Even the bullies from her past have reached out, expressing regret and admiration for the woman she has become. Though her life looks vastly different from the one she led growing up, Maya still finds comfort in the simple things. On quiet evenings, she sits on her porch, listening to the wind rustle through the trees and thinks about how everything started, with a broken record player, a patchwork dress, and a dream bigger than the sky. She knows now that life is unpredictable, full of twists and turns that can either break you or make you stronger. For Maya, it did both, and she wouldn't trade a single moment of it. As she closes her eyes and lets the cool night air wash over her, she smiles softly, knowing that somewhere out there another little girl is humming quietly to herself, dreaming of a brighter tomorrow. And maybe, just maybe, her song will inspire someone else to step into the spotlight, ready to share their truth with the world, because that's what music does. It reminds us that we're never truly alone.